Hey, hello. What's going on? It is this week's edition of the Walkthrough. I'm your host, Joe Macheca. I have a jam-packed show for everybody today. It's going to be a fun one. Obviously, Gamecock football travels to Oklahoma this week, to Norman, to take on the Oklahoma Sooners. Going to have a full breakdown of that, plus what Coach Beamer had to say in his presser yesterday. Obviously, Coach Beamer talked with the media ahead of their trip to Norman. So we'll have everything from that, as well as South Carolina women's basketball kicking off the season. Dawn Staley spoke at their version of SEC Media Days, or at the women's basketball edition of SEC Media Days. So I've got a couple quotes from her, one about how the scrimmage went last night, and two on Joyce Edwards. So plenty of stuff to get into. We'll have a full breakdown from that scrimmage, as well as everything you need headed into Oklahoma. Again, this is the Walkthrough. I will have all of that on the other side of this commercial break. Welcome in.
The Chief Sports Network presents The Walkthrough with Joe Macheca.
Yes, indeed. That time of the week is Wednesday night. Obviously, time for the Walkthrough. And once again, I'm your host, no longer Joe Macheca. It is Wednesday, October 16th. Got a lot to talk about. It's an Oklahoma week for Gamecock football. Big tilt on the road this week in Norman. Obviously, Oklahoma not ranked, lost to Texas last week, but 4-2, 10th in the SEC. Certainly poses a real challenge, especially that game being on the road. Going to be a big tilt. Going to have your full scouting report for Oklahoma, as well as some points from Shane Beamer that he made in his press conference yesterday when speaking with the media. But I guess getting off to it, it is Oklahoma week. So in the past three, obviously South Carolina with their recent run of forms, they've lost two in the past 3 weeks. LSU and Alabama, they've lost 2 games, top 10 teams by 5 points. It's pretty good. right? That is pretty darn good. You have a good football team when you're losing to top 10. Like you're right there. Like and it with this conference, it comes down to the very last minute, right? The very last seconds of games, crunch time, is ever more so important in the SEC compared to anywhere else in this country. So I think those two losses, it's something that you have to build on if you're in South Carolina, right? Close losses, there's nothing you can do about it at this point. So what Coach Beamer has been doing, and I'll pull up his quote from the presser yesterday about just being not far off. They are trying to build off of those two losses. Yes, they come in heartbreaking fashion, and yes, it's a loss, and kind of derails the season a little bit, but they have to build on it. If you plan on correcting the course for this Gamecock football season, you got to build on it. So I do want to share what Shane said yesterday about his team not being as far off or feeling close to where they want to be.
Extremely close. Was it 2 losses to top 10 teams by a total of 5 points? I think I'm saying that right. And we had plenty of opportunities in both those games to win it. The thing we've got to do a great job of is finishing. There's a lot of things that are disappointing about those games, but probably the biggest thing for me is just that in both those games, we led going into the fourth quarter. Now, I know LSU scored on the very first play of the fourth quarter, and I think they were like on the 3-yard line, so maybe there's an asterisk next to that one. But if I'm not mistaken, Steve can tell you those are the first 2 times in my time as the head coach that we've ever lost a game that we led going into the fourth quarter, and it's happened twice now. So we've got to finish. How do we finish? We play cleaner football, and we can look back at Saturday in Tuscaloosa, and there's so many opportunities on all 3 phases, offense, defense, and special teams, that we had opportunities to finish that game and not even let it get to a final drive. And a lot of those things are, self-inflicted, whether it be penalties, turnovers, you name it. So we got to you guys know I'm a big fan of Mike Tomlin, and somebody sent me his clip at halftime of I think it was the Cowboys game a couple weeks ago in his post-game interview where they asked him what he got to do in the second half, and he said something along the lines of, we got to quit kicking our own butt before we worry about kicking somebody else's. And we've had a lot of that this year, and we've got to just continue to be better and grow and learn and get better each and every week. And I see a lot of signs of that. So to answer your question, I think we're extremely close, but we also know that the margin for error in this league especially is extremely small.
Yeah. So margin of error being small, again, as I mentioned at the top of the show, is huge. One thing that Coach Beamer said in that stood out to me, right, was going into halftime and making sure that you're not beating yourselves, right? I heard it was a soundbite from Coach Signetti, right, up at IU now. Kurt Signetti up at IU. He was talking about just the different ways that he goes into halftime. Because, I don't know how everyone watching the show believes or thinks about halftime adjustments, but I'm one of those people who believes that the only thing that you can really change at halftime is the energy, right, and how your team performs and morale, I guess, at that point. So sure, those can be adjustments too, but Kurt Signetti was talking about, how he goes into halftime, and he says, when we're up by a bunch, I'm on them. I'm yelling, I'm swearing, I'm going after them, right, to make sure that we're on top of our things and doing our job and not lose focus in the second half. And he says when they're down, picks them up, right, is very calm, cool, collected. You know what we have to do. If you want to do it, go out there. Let's go out there and do it. Let's settle down, calm our nerves, get back to where you want to be. And I like that from Coach Signetti. And I think Coach Beamer's kind of talking about it a little bit here too. Finishing, right? Going into halftime with, or maintaining what your first half was in your second half. I think this has been a team that's been a tale of 2 halves. And now, obviously, with the Alabama game, a lot better performance in the second half. And they're going to continue to build on that. But again, it's really something to watch, just how they keep losing these close games. So, it's close. JBJ is the GOAT, 100%. I'm assuming Jackie Bradley Jr. there. But yes, I have a JBJ shirt. Matt Sellers got to win some of these games. Could have, should have win games to make the most of this season. Absolutely. And I mean, I think, you were obviously picking the LSU game to go better, but right now, this week against Oklahoma is where you can change the tide, right? This Oklahoma team is not great. They are not great. They're ranking, offensively, dead last in every major category in the conference, besides points, right? Points, I believe they're a little bit ahead of Kentucky. But some of these coulda, shoulda win games. I think this Oklahoma game is where you get it back on track, because it's one of those games where one of the bigger ones for sure, but the easier out of the three that you just played, especially with LSU just beating Ole Miss too. I think you have a very big opportunity to make a statement against Oklahoma here. Again, their offense is not great. Jackson Arnold got benched, and I'll have a full – Coach Beamer talked about the offense, and then I'll have a full breakdown of it too. But not great. Passing and rushing totals are less than 1,000 yards apiece. They're not a complete team offensively. They're struggling to find their own identity offensively. The scary part about this Oklahoma team, is this defense. But again, going back to coulda, shoulda, woulda win games. It just comes down to, I guess, mental toughness in the fourth quarter and learning too, right? This is a very, very young team, right? So I don't blame, losing close games on the fact that they didn't want it, or the fact that, that they aren't playing as hard in the fourth quarter, or they gave up, right? I think it is just a matter of this team being so young and so inexperienced that, it's just a learning opportunity, right? And now you do have some veterans that you brought in that should know that. But chasing Alabama and having that close of a game on the road in Tuscaloosa, it's a tough situation to practice for, right? To have experience in for anybody, right? So, and Shane talked about Lenoris yesterday as well. I liked what he said about Lenoris. I didn't clip it, but he was asked about Lenoris' performance, and minus the turnovers, it was a pretty darn good afternoon for the redshirt freshman. And so, and people want to rag on Lenoris, and I've seen the stuff with Davis Bevel and all this, but if Lenoris is healthy, you have to play him. You got to play him, right? Let him get the experience that he needs, so that way you're not like, and I don't know if you should bench him. I've heard, a lot of people saying bench Lenoris, maybe it'll teach him a lot. Like, I don't think that's how this works. Like, I think by benching him, you shake a kid's confidence. And yes, like you're an SEC quarterback, you should be able to handle a benching. But I think that he needs to continue to grow and practice. Right. One of the things that he mentioned in his post game after Alabama was like, some of the faults that we're having are practicable things, right? We just have to get back in the lab and have to, get back to work, right? So I expect them to look a lot cleaner on offense based on what Lenoir said post-game in Alabama. Their offensive game plan was pretty good. Again, you had some turnovers there. And turnovers is going to be something to watch with this Oklahoma defense too. Ranked top 10 in the country in turnovers forced. So his offense is going to have to be careful with turning the ball over. But if they keep it simple, I don't see why you don't run away with this Oklahoma game, if I'm being quite honest with you. So, I'll start with Oklahoma's offense again, kind of breaking down the scouting report as we go along here. Michael Hawkins Jr. has stepped up for Jackson Arnold after he got benched. So the whole deal with Hawkins Jr., he's 42 of 67 with 458 yards. He's got a 62% completion percentage. Not bad, pretty good. He has yet to throw an interception. That is the big thing. And now South Carolina's defense also ranked super high up in the country. I think they're 12th or something, if I'm not mistaken. Ranked super high in the country for forcing turnovers. So this is another big opportunity for, this defense, this South Carolina defense, who's been phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. At forcing turnovers these past couple of weeks. It's a big opportunity for them to wreak some havoc at OU and make this a quick and easy game. Like last week, and I saw this kind of through the Texas game, or while I was watching OU in Texas. Oklahoma just kind of quit in that game, right? So this defense, the South Carolina defense, if they play like they did last week against Bama, with the kind of suffocating, like we're better than you, like swagger, I think they can do a lot of things against Oklahoma. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one goes. But I do have a clip from Coach Beamer talking about this Oklahoma offense. Obviously, doesn't present a whole lot, and they have 4 wide receivers hurt going into this one. So let's pull up Coach Beamer's scouting report on this OU offense.
A young quarterback, looking like Oklahoma's going to roll out Michael Hawkins, true freshman. What stands out about him when you're watching the film, and then dealing with an offense that has so many injuries, especially at receiver? How much more difficult does that make getting a game plan together when you don't know really who's going to be out there on Saturday?
Yeah, it can be a challenge. I mean, you look at it, Jackson Arnold, the previous quarterback, did a lot of really good things this year. You watch his tape, and he made some big-time throws, and is a good athlete. And then you watch with Michael, the new quarterback, he's able to make throws, and obviously he brings an athletic element to the position, being able to run as well. So it's a challenge when you face a running quarterback that can improvise and get out of the pocket and make plays. And they've lost some receivers, some of their bigger receivers size-wise. This group they have, though, is still talented, though. They're twitchy, they're athletic, they can make people miss. They're really athletic at tight end and can run, and they rely on those 2 guys a lot as well. So they present a lot of problems, one, personnel-wise and the uncertainty of some things, but 2, they've got, it's Oklahoma. They haven't lacked for like really good recruiting classes, and I don't think anybody said that Oklahoma's ever not been talented. So yes, they've had some injuries, but they're an extremely talented and well-coached football team on all three phases.
Extremely talented and well-coached football team is a good point. That is simply just not looking over this Oklahoma offense. Again, there's not a whole lot there to love, if I'm being honest, for this Oklahoma offense. Again, dead last in every major category: passing yards per game, passing yards total, rushing yards per game. Dead last in every single category in the SEC besides points. So I'm not too concerned about this Oklahoma offense. Again, Jackson Arnold was benched. Hawkins has yet to throw an interception, but I have a feeling South Carolina is going to try to chase that. Running back wise, Javante Barnes has been getting the bulk of the carries, 71 carries, 237 yards, not much. And they've spread it out a lot too. Taylor Tatum is their next guy up. Jackson Arnold had a bunch of rushes as well. They run the QB quite a bit. Hawkins is up to 48 carries, 128 yards himself, but all little gains for these guys. Barnes is averaging 3.3 carries per game, or 3.3 yards per carry, so not great. Hawkins, their starting quarterback, again, 2.7 yards per carry, not great. Barnes only has 2 touchdowns. Hawkins has a touchdown for himself as well on the ground. So I expect kind of a dual threat look from Oklahoma out of the backfield with running quarterback and running back. But we'll see. Again, this offense not very talented, and I say that knock on wood, because who knows what offense can show up after beating like they took last week against Texas. So do want to play, again, going into Oklahoma's defense, though. Their defense is legit. It's pretty darn good. And Venables, obviously being a defensive coach, has been, like coaching this defense up. I think this defense has been playing above standards, to be honest with you. And so I don't know, this Oklahoma defense, their 7th takeaways is really the only stat that they're kind of scary in. 7th in the country. So they've got 6 interceptions, 9 forced fumbles, and they've recovered 8 of those. So they can do some damage turnover wise if you're not careful. You got to hold on to the football. And it's been a point of emphasis. It's good that they have to learn this lesson, or learn, kind of the fumble lesson or the turnover lesson, or have to harness it, have to like rep it out in practice as much as you do after that Alabama game, because this Oklahoma team will take it away from you quickly. And you can't let that happen, because turnovers spiral. They spiral really, really fast. And you just tend to lose momentum quickly and often when you're turning over the ball, especially on the road in conference. So not great. But Coach Beamer also previewed this defense. We'll have his words real quick about this defense, and then we'll hit a commercial break and maybe some women's basketball talk here coming up too. Let's see. pulling up Coach Beamer on the defense.
You mentioned that Oklahoma defense being 7th in the country in takeaways, and obviously ball security is probably going to be a major emphasis going into this game. But how do you kind of ramp up that preparation to make sure you take care of the ball, especially against a defense that's really good at just taking it from you?
Yeah. One, they're 7th, and I think we're 12th in the country in takeaways. So it's going to be a battle of, we got to get some takeaways ourselves, because I think turnovers in a game like this are huge. We saw that last week in Tuscaloosa. So for us, we always emphasize it every week in practice. We do multiple things about it. So you don't really change what you're doing, but you certainly just continue to just coach it and the details of how we want to get the ball out and how we want to protect the football as well, not just on offense, defense, but special teams. We knocked the ball out on the kickoff the other day against Alabama, and when we going into that game, Alabama's kickoff returners had fumbled the ball 3 times on returns this year. So we challenged our guys to go get number 4, and we knocked it out, and we just weren't quite able to recover it. So I think it's emphasizing it like we're doing. But then I think on Saturday, it's going to be about, just straining and finishing plays. And that's the thing that jumps off the tape when you watch Oklahoma's defense, is just how hard they play. And, they're flying around, and so many of their sacks, so many of their turnovers have come on just unbelievable effort, where a guy gets blocked twice and just refuses to stay blocked, and he gets off 2 blocks that they're basically double teaming him, and he sacks the Auburn quarterback or sacks the Tulane quarterback or whoever it might be. So we've got to play with great effort and play with great technique on all 3 phases.
Yeah, so playing with good effort and good technique, that should be the standard, obviously. But again, you got to be disciplined is kind of what he's hinting at for this Oklahoma defense. Being disciplined will take you a long and far way. If you're the South Carolina offense, you just can't contain and control of this game. Matt Sellers says, I'm going 20-3 prediction if defense gets a score, or a 13-3 if not. I like the defense getting a score here. I think if Hawkins is going to throw an interception, might as well be a pick 6, right? So that's kind of my thoughts with that one, Matt. I'm with you. I could see this offense running up the score. They can score a lot of points on this defense, I think. There's a lot of areas you can exploit, but you got to be careful, because Eli Drinkwitz is probably watching. So whatever you put on tape, his defense is going to be ready for. I think that's, looking at the rest of the schedule, how much of a gauntlet it is. I think Missouri's kind of the biggest test on that schedule to this point. So I don't know. We'll see. I think, if I were to give my prediction for this week, for this Gamecock football game, I think it's going to be pretty South Carolina favorite. I think they're going to be able to run the ball at will. You're going to see a lot of different backs. You're going to see Oscar Attaway mixing it up with Rocket as well, and some Juju action as well. So final score prediction, I think I got A&M looks better than Missouri. That's a good point. They beat the snot out of them the other weekend. So that's a good point. And that's, you got a bye week. We'll talk about A&M. Shoot, you have a bye week next week, which I hope everyone does responsibly and takes a good little break, because it's going to heat back up for a little while as well. So after the bye week, you've got A&M. So based on how you played after the last bye week, I think you need to make some changes. I don't know what the heck happened, or if that was just an Ole Miss thing, but you got to go in. You can't be complacent after this bye week. But yeah, A&M too. I think they've bounced back after that Notre Dame game at the start of the year, and have carved out their own little way here in the SEC now too. So the nice thing about this A&M game, Matt, is that you have it at Williams-Brice Stadium. If that game were at Kyle Field, I don't know if I'd feel as confident about it. Now, I think you can beat A&M, be a big win, but and you certainly need to down the stretch. You can win out. You can win out. That'd be one heck of a way to end your season for South Carolina. But it's certainly possible. I think A&M is kind of one of those teams that certainly are the 2 trouble areas, and then Clemson also looks good. I hate to say it, but they look good. So I don't know. Final score prediction, I guess, for the football game. I've got Carolina 24-7. I think maybe Oklahoma squeaks one in, or OU defensive touchdown, maybe. I don't know. 24/7. I think, they just handle business. Feels a lot like the Kentucky game, but you never know with this football team. And especially after one of the weeks where, you have a step up, but it wasn't a complete, a victory. You don't necessarily know what you're going to get after this Alabama game. One would expect normally a team that's coming for vengeance and wants to prove to the world that, yeah, they should have beaten Alabama by a pretty convincing margin. Or I don't know about that. That's a little much, but should have beat Alabama by maybe a score or two, right? You were in that game the whole time. You had a couple of costly turnovers. So I don't know. I think this team's got a lot of work left to do, but it starts in Norman this week, 11:45. So maybe, I've talked about this on my shows regularly, about my stigma against noon kicks in conference, right? I have always said when you have to do a noon kick in conference on the road, especially at home, it's a little different, but noon kicks on the road in conference are usually death traps. Well, I think I'm gonna give this game a pass because it's at 11:45. It's actually a noon game, right? Because usually when you're playing a noon game in conference, you got to fly somewhere, or it's on the road, right? So you got to fly somewhere, and it's usually an hour behind because of Central Time and whatnot. So a lot of these guys are not, early birds. The Debo Williams, the Lenore Sellers, sure, maybe, but I don't know if Juju McDowell wakes up at 5-6 a.m. every morning to get ready to, go for football. And maybe they're working out early enough. I don't know. I don't know who gets into the facility, who doesn't. But I've always said night games are better. Gives you some time to wake up, gives you some time to go. The only people that seem to like day games or noon kicks are coaches, and then us in the media, obviously, because we get to watch the late kicks. But I think, this one's different. It's 12:45. It's actually a noon kick, right? It gives you some time to wake up a little bit on the road. I think they're going to get out there a little early too, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue by any means. All right, so I'm going to hit a quick commercial break really fast, and then I'm going to talk about some women's hoops. Dawn Staley spoke at the Women's Basketball SEC Media Days. I've got some quotes from her. First one being about how her team played last night as they took on Memphis in the St. Jude's Classic, an exhibition game for charity. Super cool event. For that, I'll have the full breakdown from that, as well as another quote from Dawn about Joyce Edwards, who really, really dominated the scrimmage. All that on the other side of this break.
The Chief Sports Network presents.
Welcome home. That's what the Gamecocks say, and so does nationally recognized the Barndominium Company, where they are building dream homes in the Carolinas, Georgia, and Tennessee. Their turnkey process can be custom designed and takes 6 months on average. Make your dream a reality. Visit thebarndominiumco.com. Thebarndominiumco.com.
I said, oh, Lord Jesus, it's a fire.
MidlandsSC.com.
What Right to Bear is we're an association of members across the entire country, and what we offer is we offer legal defense in the event of a self-defense case.
Nice.
So it's not insurance. So we offer an attorney in the event that one of our members might have some type of an accident. ProtectWithBear.com. We've got all of our social media accounts on the bottom of our website. We've got blogs, articles, detailed description of all of the coverages in depth, and we'd love to have you come check us out and ultimately get the protection you need.
Yeah, that's our guy, Perry Orth, the man, the myth, the legend, talking to you about Bear Premium. So getting into Gamecock women's basketball a little bit. They defeated Memphis 106-63 last night. Unbelievable stuff. The preseason AP number one, preseason SEC number one. The honors are raining in for this team preseason and everything. They're getting all the accolades and stuff. But what's most important is the task at head, according to Dawn Staley. So it looked great in the scrimmage last night. Malaysia Fulwiley dinged up her ankle. I think it's just a sprain. Dawn mentioned during media days that she hasn't gotten the full lowdown, but she was walking. I'm assuming it's going to be fine. Again, one of those ankle sprains where if you're still walking, it's going to be a couple weeks, but she should be ready for the opener. So no cause for concern there. But Dawn Staley did talk about how her team played last night. So here's everything Dawn had to say about the exhibition.
In an environment like Memphis, and why we're able to do the game. The St. Jude's Research Hospital did a fantastic job showing us around, giving us the heartbeat of Memphis, and then for us to play a game. I think our players were a little bit overstimulated to start the game, but they calmed down a little bit to get back to the habits that this team has formed. I thought we had great plays from a lot of different people, and we were just pretty vanilla offensively, only because we wanted to be that way, and we got a team that we got to play in Michigan that we didn't want to give a whole lot of information to. So, thought our players did a great job just trying to get better. Everybody that got inserted into the game really made an impact in their way, and also really gave us an opportunity to show them some improvements that they need individually. So overall, great showing.
Yeah, great showing from her team indeed. The headliner of yesterday's exhibition was none other than true freshman Joyce Edwards. Edwards was the number 2 recruit in the country, I believe. Coming in South Carolina, she's one of the best players in the country and has potential to be the next freshman that makes it big for South Carolina. Again, Fulwiley had a breakout exhibition game last year against Rutgers. So Joyce Edwards having a double-double before the first half is nuts. 10 points, 10 boards for the power forwards, all-around player, Joyce Edwards. I expect her to be lethal this year. She's going to be really, really good. And now Dawn mentioned, again, like with that clip, she mentioned that, you can't leave a whole lot for Michigan to scout too bad. As they're approaching the opening tip-off of their season in Vegas against the Wolverines. Can't put too much on tape. You run the basics, run the floor, make sure everyone gets in the rhythm. It's exactly how you wanted it to go. But when Joyce Edwards can step up like she did and really carry the load and shine, it's going to catch some eyes. So Dawn Staley also talked about, what it meant for Joyce to have such a good game yesterday in the first exhibition game as a true freshman.
Played extremely well. I mean, she played like she's been practicing. So I didn't know how she'd be just because it's her first college game. She was a little nervous at the beginning of the game, right before we started the game. And I think sometimes with a player like that, they might need to see the game a little bit and anticipate what's going to happen out there on the floor. But the moment we inserted her into the game, she imposed her will on both sides of the basketball. Super high intelligent, high competitor, and just plays the right way. Very, very mature for her age.
Yeah, very mature for her age, especially at 17, is a pretty good compliment when you're playing for the best team in the country, right? That's been blowing people out. The defending national champs, undefeated national champs. Mature for your age is a great sign for Joyce Edwards at this point. And again, I think she's going to make a lot of plays this season. And now don't expect her to be superhuman, right? When you put that kind of expectations on somebody, she's going to have her fair share of ups and downs, as does any freshman at South Carolina and playing on the biggest stage in women's basketball. That is for South Carolina. So I think Joyce Edwards is going to be the highlight of. We're going to be talking about Joyce Edwards for a lot of time here leading up to the season. So it's going to be great to see how she fits in once they do start running the whole offense and getting everybody involved, and Tahina and Raven and everybody like that. But since we're still in the preseason, I wanted to get a couple of thoughts from Dawn on this show, and then also start talking about it, because this women's basketball team is really, really, really good. And so we'll have plenty of coverage. I'm going to get Brad Muller on this show, the play-by-play host, as well to do a full preview of the season and everything he's got from his side of things, doing the play-by-play. So that should be a fun interview. It's coming up. Matt Sellers says Chloe looked a lot better, more confidence and going hard at boards and scores. Yeah. Chloe's one of those players that Dawn also mentioned in media days as well. Somebody asked her, just how do you go about getting better, right? How do you go about getting better after, going undefeated and winning a national championship? Like, it's got to be impossible to want more, but these players do want that. I think Chloe was an example of when Dawn was like, she mentioned in her intermediate days thing, and I almost clipped that. I should have, that, her players want to be pros, right? And what do pros do in the summertime? They get better. I think Chloe Kitt's got a lot better this summer. And stepping into the role now of one of the PT peers, to quote Dick Vitale, one of the primetime players. Chloe Kitts is one of those players that is going to be relied upon quite a bit for this Gamecock women's basketball team. So I think that, yeah, a huge game from Chloe. And, also it's just going to look a lot, or I guess different in a way. Different players are going to step up. At Del Tac, you're going to see different faces in the post as they try to find their consistent post presence. This is the first time in a while Dawn hasn't had a consistent post presence in her offense. So kind of be really interesting to see how that all plays out. But big first W against Memphis, and more coverage here coming from the Big Spur and myself as well on women's hoops. So all on the way as well. But couple final notes on this Oklahoma game. Jay Diz checking in. No excuses. Time to win this one. Spurs up. You Okie losers. Firmly agree with that statement. Again, I think, to win this game for South Carolina football, what they have to do is just force turnovers and take care of the ball on offense. It was one of their biggest things, one of their biggest takeaways from that loss at Alabama is take care of the darn football. Please, for the love of God, right? Take care of the football. Take care of the football. And so you're going to have to do it against this Oklahoma defense, or it's going to be a long afternoon. I have full and utmost confidence for the South Carolina offense to execute entirely. But it's going to come down to just, rip it South Carolina defense to execute. Excuse me. It's going to come down to this offense. How does this offense take care of the football? Do they not? If they don't, again, it's going to be a slugfest. If you do take care of the football and execute on offense, the defense will take care of the rest. I don't see this offense other than Hawkins, right? Michael Hawkins Jr. is the one kind of question mark. He's been all right, but he hasn't played well yet. No turnovers, right? If you can get to him and get to the rest of this offense, it is going to be A-okay for South Carolina, but you have to execute on offense. The defense, I have firm faith it will take care of itself, but we'll have to see. Stephen Bessinger says 34-3 Gamecocks. That's a big score, Stephen. That's a bold prediction. I've got it 10 less. I've got 24-7. So a little bit closer than yours. So we shall see. Anyways, that will do it for this week's edition of the Walkthrough. Appreciate everyone tuning in tonight. Pretty good show. Again, broke down everything you needed from women's basketball last night in their first exhibition. And whatnot. We do have one more comment. Kevin says, for the first time in years, we aren't talking about Carolina not having the players to compete. The mental stuff can be cleaned up. Kevin, this is a great way to end the show. I'm going to be honest with you. This is a great point here. And it's something I've kind of been trying to get at these last couple of weeks here is a lot of times in the past, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but when South Carolina would play a game against Ole Miss or at least in the Mush Champ, there were times where it's we don't have the guys to compete here. We don't have the same type of dudes that are on the other sideline. Now it's an entirely different story. I agree. This is a great point here from Kevin. Because again, you are getting dudes. And if you're looking at if you're also paying attention to what Mike Furry is doing in the class of 2025, it's ridiculous. He's got a lot, half of the top 10 receivers, it feels like, for the industry rankings, for wide receivers. Mike Furry's been on a tear, and this is what I'm talking about. Like, he's getting these type of guys that belong in the SEC, that can play up to an Alabama standpoint, if you know what I'm saying. So this is a great point, Kevin. I'm glad you brought it up. He said we were hoping the other team would play bad and rely on turnovers. Yeah, exactly. Right. For the shock and awe factor, when you don't have those kind of dudes that are on the other sideline, you kind of have to rely on a little bit of magic. But now it's just mental stuff. Like, it really is. And Kevin, I think you're hitting the nail on the head there, because what Lenoris was saying after the game was like, hey, it's something we just got to rep out. It's just something we got to, get out of our system and get things back on track and just rep and get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So great point. And again, I think, it's a good way to end the show on some positivity, because they got some dudes over there at over there in that building, in the Long Family Ops building. Like, they've got a team. And even though you lost those 3 games to LSU, Ole Miss, and Alabama, you're still ranked towards the top in just about every category, offensively and defensively in the SEC. So you're one of the better teams with a losing record in the best conference in football. So there's a lot to hold your head high on, and it's only going to go up, right? Because if you can keep getting dudes like that, it's going to snowball, right? Eventually they're going to start, they're going to make or be experienced enough to make those plays in the situations, right? We talked about Lenoris being a little young. Now he has the experience. He knows what it's like to be in a tight game on the road at one of the hardest environments in college football, quite literally. So it's just one of those things. Experience is going to come with, and now, I expect a lot of this experience gained from these losses to pay off in the second half of the season. It has to, right? Something has to give. And I think that's kind of the attitude around this fan base with this football team right now. Something's got to give, because you're that close. You've got the dudes. So got to make some plays. Especially got to do it over there in Norman this weekend. 12:45 kickoff from Norman as we get ready for another SEC tilt on the road. So tune into that. Matt, Alex, and I will have the Rooster Rant on Sunday. So fun stuff. We'll have the full recap of everything from Oklahoma. Should be a lot of fun. And then also trying to work on some merch for this show. Should be coming up here soon with the bird right here next to me. That's going to be on some hats, and we'll try to get some hoodies and stuff working too as well. So going to be a whole lot of fun. Got some fun things planned for this show as well, coming up here shortly too. So appreciate everyone tuning in on this Wednesday night, and we will see you. I will see you guys Sunday and the next Wednesday for the show right here, same time, same place. You know what it is. Appreciate everyone tuning in again, and enjoy the rest of your weeks.